Very good afternoon to all of you and warm welcome to our webinar series Apprenticeship Dialogue, where today we'll be discussing about talent creation through degree apprenticeship. Degree apprenticeship is basically an 3 years apprenticeship program, which is blended with on-the-job training and a formal education, which can be implemented through an online, on-site and on-campus model. To discuss the same today, we have with us three eminent industry leaders who have been able to successfully implement Apprenticeship Act in the organizations for many years now. So we have with us Mr. Ajit Dias, who is Associate Vice President, Human Resource with the Indian Hotels Company Limited. And then I have with us Aashay, who is business HR business partner, national HR business partner, supply chain with Jubilant FoodWorks. We'll be also joining us Mr. Rajneesh, who is CHR of Bikano. He's having some technical issues. He will take a couple of more minutes to join us for this particular discussion. Thank you both for taking out time for this discussion on degree apprenticeship. As we all know, India is more of education-based market than a skill-based market for many years now. And I think one of the basic reason why today we have the skill deficit, because India is more always on talking about degrees, diplomas, but the kind of what you call it, the skill which is required to become productive at the workforce is always lacking because of the regulation issues, because of the kind of infrastructure we have in the education system. I think today we all talk about fiscal deficit, but I think the skill deficit is something which is going which will become a very important part of any economy to grow in future, and kind of the milestones we are looking for a $1 trillion economy. I think the skill deficit will play a very important role if we don't bridge the gap. We have Apprenticeship Act for last so many years now, but still I think the kind of implementation which was required under Apprenticeship Act is not there. We have hardly say 5 lakh apprentices in last so many years now. I think maybe this is because of the rigidness of the regulation or the inawareness of the establishment why they need to hire apprentices. Today, to discuss the same, I think we have 4 points for discussion, which is basically on why apprenticeship, why you guys have adopted apprenticeship program, what do you feel in terms of the outcome once they complete the apprenticeship program, whether they have become employable or not through this particular 3 years, 1 year kind of apprenticeship program, and how you feel the degree apprenticeship, which is the way forward for India in terms of reducing the skill deficit, how it can help your organization and your industry also in terms of bridging the gap of skill deficit. So I would like to start a discussion with Ajit. Ajit, I know you have been implementing or you have been doing apprenticeship for so many years now, right? And so going to basic question, what prompted you to have apprentices in your organization? Over to you, Ajit.
Thank you, Dhriti. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here. And I think, yes, you rightly set the context that, with the focus that we have from where the economy is moving, there is still this deficit when it comes to, skilled resources and, of course, the apprentice program. So what prompted us primarily to look at apprentices, we wanted to really, like you rightly said, there was this gap this between the skill and knowledge. And we wanted to even create our own talent pipeline. We wanted to look at better longevity. And we also wanted to ensure that we groom and grow our talent the way we would like to, so that we can customize it. And it also helps in the long run strategy of the organization. So those were some of the reasons and the advantages that had prompted us to sort of look at apprentice in a much larger way than existed. So that's what I would like to share.
Okay. Great. So Ajit, when you hire apprentices, I think once they complete the program, do you see the outcome like employability is really right? So what do you feel about the outcome once the apprenticeship program get over, specific to your industry, right?
Sure.
Which
So
is basically skill based, completely skill based.
yeah. Yeah. So for us, we see a lot of advantages when somebody actually does, and I'm talking now from perspective of if I were an apprentice. In our industry, there's a lot of tacit knowledge transfer that happens. And what we've seen is a world of difference when the apprentices, they come into our industry, and let's say a year and a half after the program, and they when we see completion of the program, how does one perceive that particular person? So there's a huge amount of I'm talking of the soft skills. They learn a lot of soft skills, and there's an immense difference and change in personality, and so that's something which we see, which definitely leads to greater levels of employability within the industry. So yes, I would say there is absolutely over 100% employability factor when somebody goes or becomes an apprentice in one of the functions in a hotel. So there is great levels of employment.
Great. So when you talk about when you started the apprenticeship act, what are challenges you face, internal and external, right? Convincing the internal stakeholders, and then even go and get the apprentices, because you need to go and get apprentices, right? In terms of hiring the apprentices, what are challenges you face in terms of internal and external stakeholders, Ajit?
Sure. So I think the biggest challenge, of course, is the sourcing, to say that, we're getting the right pool of talent that we take as apprentices. So initially, yes, there was a little bit the first time when before we could run an apprentice program, there were perhaps internal stakeholders who were a little skeptical, because, they wanted to look at the regular channels that we were using, the regular training that was happening. And of course, there was a little bit of an administrative challenge as well. But post starting the program, we really didn't see much. There was a lot of buy-in. In fact, right now, from the line managers, we get a lot more requests that we would like to see more apprentices working with us. And, also the fact that one of the advantage was that we've seen great levels of mobility with the apprentices. So, they have helped to fill in the gaps wherever there was a need. Because of the mobility factors. And of course, the fact, like I mentioned earlier, you're able to train and groom them to sort of the standards and processes that you would like to see, in service. And that's a big advantage. So not much. I mean, initially there was, but definitely now not much of a challenge, so to speak.
Thank you. I think I'll take up the same question with Aashay. What prompted you to hire apprentices or trainees in your organization?
I think the way to look at it is that I don't think it was something new that happened in that sense. I think it was a fairly accepted practice for almost forever that apprentices are an integral part of the ecosystem in which we are operating. See that the challenge with which we operate is predominantly on the skilled manpower side. Some of the supply chain center operations that we're talking about require skilled manpower, people who are coming with technical know-how and are able to work on machines, work on equipments and perform there. And apprentices, I think in that sense, are a very natural choice for us, because these are people who have been trained in that trade. So what's happened also is, if you look at the industry overall, engineering has become more semi-general management, so to speak. And the core technical know-how that resides a lot in your folks who've done their ITIs and diplomas and in various fields. And so hence, obviously for us, it was a very natural choice that apprentices will be there, will be able to impart their know-how in our business and will be able to grow as the organization grows. So I think that is the genesis of the entire apprenticeship. It was a very natural thing. At least I'm not sure that there was any convincing required on that front. It was just a very, very natural segue that existed that was exploited by us in that sense.
And how do you see the outcome once they completed the training and apprenticeship program? Do you see the final outcome as per your desired requirement?
So the way we would look at it is when you look at campus hires, for example, your management school campus hire or your engineering school campus hires. The reason why organizations come up with this detailed 1 year long stint and programs is basically to ensure that freshers from campus are able to learn with the organization and are getting molded in the organization's ways of working. The thinking might be fresh, but the ways of working then, people get comfortable with. I think it's a very similar analogy that exists for apprentices. So here is a group of very talented, technically skilled folks who are being hired from campuses directly and are spending a year or more, I think it's at least a year with the organization and are understanding the nuances of work. The work will be at a very, very frontline level, for the lack of a better word, directly at the factory shop, at the shop floor, on the machine, so on and so forth. But that is where they're able to add value. They're able to earn value because they're learning new skills. It's a practical implementation of what they've done at campus. And if they're able to add value because they're able to apply the learnings from the campus and are helping make things better, solve for challenges, look at look at a sustainable solution for challenges, so on and so forth. So in that sense, I think it's a very, very strong value add, that exists. And from a talent pool perspective also, at least at that, for that particular demographic, I'm not sure if demographic is the right word, but for that particular set, I think it's a very natural match that exists.
So what about the attrition part? Do you see attrition is in initial stages, attrition is high, then they get stabilized, or like it's how?
So I think the way I look at it is, I think it is very similar to industry standards. See, the deal is that now you also have a set of apprentices who might be skilled technically, but whose calling in life is not on the shop floor. Who want to do something else and not necessarily the technical stuff. In which case, we obviously see attrition that happens. Plus, the nature of industry is also such that it's a competitive environment, which is how it should be. And hence, people are getting opportunities. So if not here, then elsewhere. If not this role, then some other role, some other place. So those kind of things happen. But that having been said, I think, obviously, attrition is never a very comforting subject, so to speak. But I think it's something that we should be comfortable with and we should live with. That's all right. I think that's how the job market is, and that is how it should be. So from that perspective, I think it's a problem that we will learn to live with, and we as an industry, we'll need to keep seeing how are we able to ensure that from our own value adding perspective to these apprentices, we are able to do justice. I think that's the way we should look at it. What more we need to do to ensure they're able to learn more, they're able to add more value, and so on and so forth. So I think that's how I would like to look at it.
Got it. So I think I take up this question quickly with Ajit. What do you feel about the attrition of apprentices, right? What a percentage attrition? What a percentage attrition you have in your industry or specific to your company? Do you think attrition happens initial days or is it a continuous process when you hire apprentices?
But I think I would agree with what Aashay said, that yes, it is it's industry specific. Maybe it's even more functional perspective, and like for example, if you look at a chef, then you need to sort of develop skills, and it takes longer before there is a certain market value. So it varies, and also of course it also varies which market, which region, what's the churn happening over there, because of course these are base level, entry level. But I don't think there is a little bit of initial churn, and that happens because maybe it's that getting used to the industry or the understanding. I think Aashay touch upon that maybe this is not where I want to be, and that happens, but it's not that high. Most of the during the program, I think, because there is a learning path, you don't see much of attrition over there. But yes, I would also like to mention that I think what's important is the kind of support mechanisms and the kind of hand-holding, the kind of review mechanisms that are in place, which help, and if one focuses and can build it stronger, then you do see better results.
Okay, so even very specific to the productivity part of it, right? I think it's very common state whenever you go and talking about apprenticeship, they talk apprenticeship all about like training, right?
Oh,
The
yeah.
outcome is not there, which they look for as per the Apprenticeship Act rules and other things. But my personal belief is that until they become productive, how you going to judge a person whether he will be able to be an employee or not, or he can be part of a supply chain which is productive or not. So, Ajit, what is your thought on the productivity part for the apprentices?
So I think the productivity, this is even I'm just building on a discussion that I've had with Sumit earlier, let's say about a couple of years back, and I think it's changed. And over the last 2 years, the time frame for, let's say, an apprentice to become productive, and I'm also talking more industry specific now, I think it's reduced because in fact, during the pandemic, we definitely did take more apprentices, and we've seen that they have been able to deliver or become productive, so to speak, much faster. So maybe there's a 2 or 3 months of initial so-called learning, observing, and learning rather than doing. But I think comparatively, it's much faster, and the productivity levels, of course, maybe after 6 months they see. So it is, if you look at a graph, a productivity graph, you would see a certain spurts, but I think it's moved in the right direction, and definitely is much better.
Got it. Again, the same question to Aashay. How do you analyze the productivity aspect of an apprentice? 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. How do you
see? It's a very tricky question, honestly. See, the first 3 months actually go in settling down. It's a campus to corporate kind of a transition, which is a typical transition that exists. So 3 months obviously will go in the person settling down, understanding what is happening in the organization. It's a very different world from a protected environment that exists. When you are a student, here you're supposed to create value. You're supposed to be able to get things done with whatever pressures and pulls and pushes that come with the business. So 3 months will obviously go in settling down. The remaining 4th month onwards is when a person starts performing. Starts delivering slowly and steadily, and you'd start seeing the actual results coming in only by the end of month 8 or month 9. That's how I would like to look at it. At the end of 12 months, as an organization and as apprentices, both parties would get to know whether this is working out or not. If somebody is not able to, deliver that impact even at the end of 12 months, then clearly it's either a case of mismatch, or it's a case of lack of interest, or whatever personal, professional challenges that there might be. But typically 9 months is when you can actually publish a report card saying that the productivity numbers have started hitting in, the impact is being created, the impact is something that is adding value, so on and so forth. So I think the way to look at that productivity value, like what Ajit also said, is exactly that. So 3 months settling down, and then between 6 to 9 months, you start seeing most people becoming productive. And then at the end of 9 months, you are, the report card is fairly out.
Great. So I think now we'll go back to the most important discussion topic, which is like degree apprenticeship, right? Which is basically, you can say 3 years of apprenticeship program, which is blended with on-the-job training, and then he get his formal education also. So I like to have the discussion with Ajit. Ajit, what is your thought on blending the on-the-job training with a formal education, where the apprentice doesn't need to go to a university and get his degree? He can be at a client place or an organization doing his on-the-job skilling, and then he get his formal education also. So how do you see from your company or from your industry perspective, Ajit?
Thanks, Dhriti. I think that's a very, very interesting question. And of course, you've seen the need, and I think you all are trying to address that. So definitely, I mean, like Aashay was saying, and when I was talking about my ginger story. But yes, the apprentice program, I think, at least for the hotel industry, it's been very, very, it's been there right perhaps right from this time the industry started, it was informal, and then it got a formal structure, and with regulations coming in, today we see it very differently. So, but in our Indian context, yes, the apprentice tag is not as glorified as when you say you're an intern, or you're a management trainee, or you're a corporate trainee. So these words are much more attractive, and of course, but traditionally in our industry, the interns, sorry, not interns, but rather the apprentice was the traditional route, and that's how most leaders in the industry grew. So yes, I think this is a very interesting idea to bring about graduation as well as the apprentice into the apprentice kind of program. And also what's going to be, I think, key is the balance between the kind of theoretical inputs, and how does one get to spend time with that, still balancing the requirement. Because I think the challenge definitely for a student is going to be, or the program structure would be, to say that how can we ensure that we don't dilute these certain. So practical, I guess, would happen, and after a certain phase of time, the practical inputs will become more intense. But how do you maintain intensity of the other inputs, or the theoretical inputs that are required? So those are a few views that are, or thoughts on my mind.
Yeah, I think it is going to be very interesting thing in terms of degree apprenticeship. I think with a new education policy which came in 2020 was actually emphasizing on how the skilling which is done, right, can get a credit input, and that credit become a corridor for formal education. I think industry like yours, which is like a blend of skilling and formal education, I think degree apprenticeship will make a lot of sense, what we believe. So I like to tell the audience also here, I think I missed out that particular piece when we started the discussion. We TeamLease Degree Apprenticeship was launched in April 2022. So it's basically we relaunch our product as a degree apprenticeship, which is basically a blend of formal education and on-the-job training. The objective of degree apprenticeship was basically creating that need for the industry, where they understand it is not only skill, or this is not only formal education. I think both the things need to go hand on hand. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for someone to have only skill, and then HR come with a policy that he's a graduate, I cannot move him to that level. I think both the things are very important. I think I agree with you. I think specific to your industry, I think this will be a game changer, I think, in terms of reducing the skill deficit. I think going back to Aashay, what is your perspective with degree apprenticeship, blending of on the job and the formal education?
No, so I think, see, as an idea, obviously it's the great novel idea, and it will obviously help from an overall improving employability prospect for a large number of students who come from that background. The only caveat here is that in at least in the technical domain, I think there is no escaping domain knowledge, and hence hence efforts will have to be made to ensure that the rigor of domain knowledge or technical know-how, that does not get diluted because of this blending of on-the-job experience along with parallel learning that is happening, right? Otherwise, what will happen is it will be the worst of both worlds, because technical know-how might, if it becomes lacking, it will impact employability, and because then there is no employability, and hence there is no technical domain to be grasped. So that might become a vicious circle, which we should be aware of. But from an otherwise trainability perspective, employability perspective, I think it's a great idea. I think that's a novel thought.
Right, thanks. I think I'll go to Ajit again for the degree apprenticeship discussion. Ajit, what are challenges you see in terms of, like, from your industry perspective, when you start working on creating the curriculums with the government agencies and authorities? What the preliminary stage, what do you see any challenge which can, with respect to implementation?
No, I don't see much of a challenge. Perhaps what could be a challenge is more in terms of how much is let's say the curriculum in tune with what is required in the industry, or I think matching or mapping aspirations of the even the individual going through the apprentice as to what that person may want as an outcome of the program. But overall, I think it's a very interesting concept and something new if it is structured to what the really industry wants, and it surely should help. I mean, I don't see much of a challenge when it comes to
So
that
you're talking
perspective.
about getting the relevant job roles,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
The job roles, which is
Yes.
important, instead of doing the traditional kind of job roles, which are future job roles, can be blended with particular on-the-job training. I think that is what I think you're trying to emphasize, that
Correct.
it should not
Yes.
be it should be very specific job roles, so they become skilled to particular industry.
Yes. Yes.
So the same question to you. Do you see foresee any challenges in terms of implementation of degree apprenticeship in your industry? Because your industry is very different from Ajit's industry.
No, yeah, absolutely. But I think the nature of industry is being different, but I think these intricacies or these nuances are very similar across. So I think like what Ajit said, I think it's exactly that. So just ensuring that people are coming with the right skill set and are able to contribute, because the way the business will look at any resource is in terms of the kind of value that can be added by that resource. Hitherto, the value that was getting added by apprentices was on account of their technical skills. With this new program, the opportunities are immense, but it is also to ensure that people come with the right set of skills. Some of them they will learn, some of them they will have already grasped, and they should be able to create value at the workplace in the shortest possible span of time. The good thing is also that it's a slightly extended program, so the exposure to the candidate is that much more. But the other side to it also is that the expectation will also be accordingly.
So I think that is where we play as an industry or as an academic institution. I think the succession plan, right, the moment they join, I think is very important for us or for you guys also as an organization to create that succession plan, that after 3 years what you can be, right, whether you can move to a store manager or you move to a team manager kind of a thing. I think so. How you're structured in terms of your succession plan for apprentices, Aashay? For the current scenario, do you have the succession plan for apprentices?
Yeah. Yes. So for the apprentices, like I said, in terms of the performance or in terms of the actual overall value add that people are able to do, they get deployed immediately after the completion of their apprenticeship as full-time, either as full-time trainees, full-time employees in the front line, on the shop floor, or depending again on the performance, they would get routed through a similar path that would land them in the same position in a couple of years' time. So
Ajit,
direct.
yeah. Sorry, you're saying something. Sorry.
No, so similar outcomes.
Yeah. So Ajit, how you're managing the succession plan for the apprentices when they join and when they complete? The stakeholders involved in terms of the succession plan and all those things.
Yeah. So I think it's what you've hit upon is a extremely crucial and critical element for let's say longevity and career longevity with the organization, and that's something that we've learned is very important. What we call it is career paths or career pathing. So very important two ways. One is one is of course from the mindset, because in our industry, maybe the career paths were there, but unlike the new age industries, there weren't timelines put to it. So something we did when we took people off campuses, we actually, when we gave them offers, we put, so it was going out on a limb, but it maybe helped us with our own internal focus, where we put timelines to say that within the first 2 years, after 2 years, this is where you can see yourself, after 3 years, after 5 years, So that proved to be quite a, effective mode, both because that was appreciated by the candidates, as well as that was something which led to internal focus to say, how do we make that happen? Okay, so yes, I think it's very important if you want to have longevity for the candidate. It's important to have at least a 3 to 5 year kind of a framework of how the progression or succession planning happens. Yes, of course, there are certain technical aspects where when there are technical sort of skills or knowledge which are required. I think what organizations can also do is build it into their training program, build it into their HR frameworks, and it surely should help see better longevity of apprentices as well.
So Ajit, any case study or any reference you want to give it to us in terms of a successful apprentice moving from an apprenticeship program to an employee? If you can share some experience with us.
No, so several. I mean, I've been with the industry for long now, and I can, as you were asking this question, my mind was dashing in various directions to say that, oh my God, there's so many. Some of my bosses also had, that I had, and especially if you, like for example, if you look at food and beverages as the field, you have a lot of people who had started with as apprentices and today are general managers of the hotel. So there are many cases, there are many such cases that exist, and a lot of them, have learned, since they started the apprentice route, and traditionally there wasn't like the program you mentioned, there wasn't a degree. So they are very passionate individuals also because they are self-made, they've educated themselves along with the program and they've grown. So yes, I think there are a lot of examples, but I think what's really interesting is this fact of, today, if you're creating this opportunity of people also being able to educate themselves as they, skill themselves, that's a very interesting concept. And if we are able to build it and sort of direct it towards what the actual industry needs are, then you're going to see many more such examples and cases.
So Ajit, when you talk about apprentices, your apprentices go to different skill job roles basically, or they stick to a one job role for a particular period, or they do multiple job roles or multiple skilling programs they do during this 1 year, 1.5 years time?
So what we've also done is we've also brought in some multi-skilling programs where they do at least at a minimum 2 functions. So yes, apprentices are able to, if it is the front of the house, if a function, then or even if it's back of the house, we are for those who show the capability and are able to progress at, have good assessment results, good certification results, then they're given the opportunity to skill themselves in another function as well. It's a little nascent also but yes, that's where a lot of multi-skilling, I think, is where we see in the industry, across the industry actually. So there is a lot of opportunity, and certain functions, yes, there is a higher level of multi-skilling, and some functions maybe it is still in a growth phase, but yes, there is that huge opportunity that an apprentice has to learn, multi-skill and work across functions. Yeah.
I think I take up this question, Aashay. In your industry or your organization, you also have different job roles. So these apprentices go to a different job roles, or they stick to a particular job role or a skilling program for the particular duration of the apprenticeship program?
So I think at least 2 to 3 stints in different verticals in that 12-month cycle. That is how I would define it. Typically 2, but maybe even 3 in a couple of cases. So the objective is to maximize experience. And again, I'll keep harping on the point of value addition. So that is how we would like to, we look at it. So it is not as if it's in the same role. Plus, it also depends a lot on the opportunities. The nature of business is extremely dynamic, right? So depending on the business priorities that exist, people will be given opportunities and exposure to different areas.
So what is the gender diversity in terms of apprenticeship group which you have?
So that's an interesting question. I think that is something that's an area in which there is a lot of ground to cover. We have made sizable progress, by the way. So today, for example, one of our in one of our sections in the supply chain center is exclusively being manned by women. But if you look at it at an overall aggregate level, I don't think it's a very, I mean, we're not even close to 50-50 kind of a distribution when it comes to apprentices. There are several reasons. Couple of them obviously is that the nature of manufacturing sites, etc., is not necessarily, I know it's not right to generalize, but I think there exists some sort of hesitation still, for that being a preferred location or a career location for women, for example. It's not to say that it's a binary thing, but I think there is some level of hesitation. The other is also, if you look at it from an overall perspective, so when you're looking at people who are coming from fitter or electrician or those kind of backgrounds, typically you would find fewer females. You would typically find fewer females. The other place where you might get a little more gender diversity, for example, in say food technology, which is offered as a course in some of the ITIs. Now those courses are not available far and wide. There's a limit to the number of campuses that offer these kind of courses. So we get rogered both ways. There are limited number of applicants.
Will help you in this particular the pain area which you have, where actually you can design your own curriculum for like with multiple job roles or multiple skilling programs, combine it making a 3 years program. Right? I think that is how, yeah.
I think that will help. I think that will absolutely help, because in the current situation, otherwise, like I said, we get rogered both ways. We're not able to find people, and where we might find gender diversity, we don't have enough options available. So maybe, yes, you're right. I think a degree apprenticeship might be a good idea to pursue in that case.
I think I'll take up the question again with Ajit. Ajit, I know your industry is like gender diversity is like, I'm sure it is there, but what is your thought on apprenticeship gender diversity, specific to your industry and your company?
So yes, I mean, definitely we are not, like what Aashay said, is that we perhaps are not where we should be, and we would definitely, I think most organizations are trying to build up this talent pipeline of and have a more balanced gender ratio. So yes, the focus for us also is to do that. It's also, there are certain regions, and of course you'd see that in the metro cities, it's more easier. Culturally also, there is a distinction in our country. Is not one country, but it's many countries put into one. So yeah, so but there is opportunity. Having said that, there's opportunity to definitely build on the gender diversity. Something that we'd also like to focus is on affirmative action and looking at marginalized sections, because what we've seen, like we've also looked at differently abled resources, and we've seen that it's amazing. Of course, you need to build infrastructure, you need to build mindset, you need to build training with existing employees to facilitate that. But literally till before the pandemic, we literally had a 1% or 2% attrition rate with differently able people. So yes, I think what's important is building support structures to sustainable. I think the key thing is, how do you sustain it? You may reach a certain ratio that you target, but how do you sustain the ratio? That's the challenge today.
So Ajit, now festival season is coming, right? And then people will be they're going holidays and all those. How you're getting up for your supply chain, or you can say your hiring needs for next 6 months? What's the plan of how many apprentices or a percentage of apprentices you're going to hire? So how does 6 months look now? Next 6 months.
Well, I think we've been looking forward to the next 6 months after the last 2 years, and hopefully there isn't any other so-called shocker which comes through after the war and the literally 3 and 4 bouts of the pandemic. So definitely, yes, it's time when we are focusing on building the pipeline, building the channels, and fueling up. So definitely, let's say if it was a single digit, now we are looking at double digits. And of course, the focus also remains on how is the skilling programs happening, how the training programs happening, because this is the right type to sort of build up so that once, season hits we are able to cater to that demand. And of course, HR has been under a lot of pressure for the last, I would say, a year now, when, things turn around. And we've seen this huge amount of shift and change in and the skill gap is only widened, and the gap of the kind of resources that we have won is suddenly sort of exponentially grown. So yes, it remains a challenge, but I think hopefully we should, by focusing on the right channels, by focusing on, like you said, the apprentices, getting them timely recruitment, that should help.
I think I'll take up the same question with Aashay. So how do you see for next 6 months? Rather, your duration will be till January, right? So how do you see how the hiring trends look specific to apprentices?
I think very encouraging trends is how I would like to put it briefly. I think very, very encouraging trends, because like Ajit mentioned, now that hopefully COVID and all of those things are behind us, and hopefully we will have a good festive season, so to speak, which starts sometime from August and goes on till the end of the year. It's like an extended festive season that happens. I think it's also a time when business actually booms and picks up. So the requirement for apprentices is going to go up. I think there is a lot of seasonality is not the right word, but I think there is a lot of boost that comes because of additional sales that happens in this time, and business obviously picks up very rapidly, and hence there is increased requirement for meeting business requirements at supply chains to centers, and hence obviously we'll have to compensate for that by adding more and more apprentices. The other way to look at it is also, as the business continues to grow and do well, we are not only solving for today, but we're also trying to solve for tomorrow. So by getting apprentices, it's not about just this 6 months or 3 months or 4 months. It's actually about building that pipeline for the next year as well. So you hire X number of apprentices, and hopefully at least you get a good conversion ratio of people at the end of the year who are then employable directly in your organization. So as business grows, headcount requirements grow, opportunities grow for apprentices, and here we have a ready pool of trained people who can be deployed readily on the floor. So it just makes sense for us.
Absolutely. So I would like to know from both of you, what are challenges, if you have anything, or you find something which we need to put it to, because we being in this particular industry for so many years, in apprenticeship business for last almost like 10-12 years, where we are one of the advocating agencies with the government. So I think maybe Aashay, you can put any challenges you find in terms of implementation Apprenticeship Act, anything which actually push back you not to hire apprentices, maybe the compliance part, maybe the ease of doing apprenticeship. Anything you want to put it here?
Not really. In fact, I think the law that way is fairly enabling, and it actually helps organizations hire apprentices. Obviously, there are some bit of compliances, etc., that need to be furnished from time to time, but I think that's all right. I think that's fine. The only thing that and it's nothing to do with the law or anything. I think it just as business, as industry, I think we need to see how we can make stronger connects with institutes, ITI, diploma, etc., whatever the campuses that are offering apprenticeship, and ensure that we are able to get the right talent at the right time. Many a times our apprentice hiring tends to be very ad hoc because there's a requirement, hence we'll go and do it. I think it'll make immense business sense for us to plan our apprenticeship hiring, quote unquote, hiring calendar, and enable these relations with these institutes and a more richer bond, right? Wherein, so it's which basically means that you are able to get almost a dedicated talent pool available for your organization directly. So I think more efforts in that direction. Otherwise, I think it's a fairly enabling piece of act and law.
So most of your hiring is happening from colleges, or like from any other channels which is non-college channels also, or most of them is from colleges?
Predominantly it's from campuses. Predominantly it's from colleges. Referrals and all of those things keep happening, but predominantly from campuses.
So Ajit, you have been implementing apprenticeship so many years from I think it's before 2019 when we got the Simplification Apprenticeship Act. 2019 was a landmark year for Apprenticeship Act where we got a lot of changes done. Anything you still think that that government should take up to make apprenticeship more ease of implementing apprenticeship? Anything you want to put it here so that we can
No.
take it up with the ministry?
Yeah. So yes, of course, I would agree that the Apprentice Act is progressed in the right direction. Of course, I mean, a lot of credit and kudos goes to y'all also, who have been these mediators who've brought in ease the compliance mechanism. But I still feel if it can be made a little easier, it could be more self-directed or driven compliances that where the person does it, and there is a one. I mean, I agree also absolutely. I'm not going to say what Aashay said is spot on. That's something which is there on my mind also in terms of what he had mentioned of the right talent at the right time, but also to facilitate that's an opportunity that comes to mind is actually also that if there can be some readily available government databases that's accessible. And when I say that, I don't only mean, I mean more at a, let's say, a national level, which also covers, because the fact is that sometimes as organizations, our focuses are on very, very traditional or familiar sourcing mechanisms or pools, but with I think one of the biggest strengths that we have today is also the employment, the kind of numbers that exist. The only thing is that as industry, you don't get a sense of employability, how employable is the candidate. So if the government can do something in terms of, let's say the person is interested in that vocation and that it's tried and tested method in other countries. And of course, I think Dhriti, you also mentioned this, that in terms of percentages, where we are vis-a-vis, let's say China or many of the other nations, we have a very small percentage of apprentices, and that's possibly because there needs to be more work done on a little bit of pre-certification, or can I get some sort of a feeler? I'm just putting it very simply that, if I am to, let's say there is this candidate who I would like to take as an apprentice, is there some pre-screening, some sort of a background, some sort of database, some sort of a, that is available to me very readily for me to choose from, so I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it needs to become more accessible. It needs to be more on an open platform.
So are you referring to the what you call it, hire, train and deploy kind of a model where they get trained for a couple of weeks and they get on board an apprentice? This is what you are
referring to? No, so that could be one. That is definitely one approach. The other approach is just to say that, how do I know? Suppose there is a certain region, and if I want to really say, in this particular region there is talent, how much of this talent may be interested in this particular vocation, how do I know? Is there a centrally database network that I can go and sort of download it and get access to? So that's something which I think is.
Ajit, don't you think that has a correlation with the counseling of the students also, right? When they come for their career counseling, I think most of people are not, the way they should be counseling should happen is not happening, right? Where they are all talking about going to university, doing the regular degree or diploma programs. I think today, if we talk about the counseling them to join them as a degree apprentice, right, which is basically, I think that piece also is missing in the ecosystem, I think, which we believe. And I agree with you. I think we should have a ready-made pool, at least to keep the supply chain going, right? As Aashay said, that we need to have people right time. If I need an apprentice today, if I don't get an apprentice, then I need to fill up with something else. I need to hire maybe an employee or something which increase my cost in terms of productivity, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I would agree.
Sure. I think we'll take up a couple of questions and then we're going to wind up. So let me check the questions. So I think we have one question. What are the future job opportunities for apprenticeship? So very generic, but I think it's very specific to industry also. So today, I think what he's trying to express is that if I join an apprentice, what is my future in terms of getting a job? So maybe Ajit, you can take up this question, then I'll take input from Aashay also on this.
Sure. So, even though in terms of layering or in terms of levels, we've become smaller, and that's what's happening in the industry across. The hierarchies are decreasing, but I think if any candidate has the right attitude and has the eagerness to learn and grow, then can definitely today, I'm very confident to say that person starting an apprentice, at least at a hotel, can easily become the general manager, right? So there are no boundaries to grow today, and it's quite possible for them. For most, I would say 80% of candidates.
So it's about the attitude
rise.
to it, I think the learning curve, and then he should have that gel, and then that fire in him that he can be a employee, a future employee. I think it started apprenticeship, right? I think it's all about that particular person. I think organization need to play also important role in terms of creating that structure, right? Like a lot of organizations today, I see they have a very structured way of putting apprentices and the succession plan. I think what you also talking about, and Nasha also put it, right? Aashay, I think the same question to you. Like, what are future job opportunities specific to your industry or your organization when you have an apprentice?
So I think the only thing that I would like to add to what Ajit said, because I think he covered it perfectly, is the fact that in addition to everything else, ensuring that that there is adequate focus on one's own learning, I think is very important. See, if it's a technical domain, there is no shortcut for understanding those technical skills. I mean, those things cannot be done any which way except going through the grind of it and ensuring that you're aware of it and you stay abreast of the happenings in the industry. So I think in addition to attitude, in addition to the right mindset, ensuring that you are on a sound footing when it comes to technical skills will go a long way. And I don't think there's any dearth of opportunities. See, fortunately, a young country like ours, booming economy, of no dearth of opportunities. I think industry is just waiting for brilliant people to just come in and just lap up those opportunities. I think that's how I would like to put it.
Sure. I think I'll take up one more question. Ajit, we are a country where we need to get subsidy to have apprentices. I think I am referring to a NAP subsidy right now, which is now will be slowly moving out and becoming the trainee is going to get the benefit of that particular subsidy. So do you think organization like yours and Aashay, organization like yours is large nature organization where multiple job roles, multiple people, multiple functions, do you think India should spend money in promoting apprenticeship by giving subsidy to establishment? Which I personally don't agree, right? Because ultimately, when you have an apprentice, you being able to get the supply chain which is required at a very nominal cost, right? So, what is your thought on the government subsidies, Ajit, for apprenticeship promotions?
No, you're right, Dhriti. I think if the subsidies can be directed more for the students, and like I said, there's a huge opportunity because in our hinterlands there's really unexplored talent, and if we can, even for marginalized sections who are face certain economic challenges, can we use that to promote the students or candidates from to get those subsidies so that it sort of helps them as they fund their own education, so to speak. So I think that is a win-win situation to do, where you're giving that, not so much to support or to promote the concept, but to help the students. And if they can be directed well, like I said, if it can be self-directed, I register myself, I get access to it, I sort of submit whatever documentation. And if the process becomes easier, I definitely think it should help.
Aashay, what is your thought on government subsidy? Because I think organizations should not, I'm my personal belief, right, in this ecosystem for almost 8 years now. There are a lot of other benefits which is much stronger for an organization and which make a lot of business sense for people like you who are managing the large businesses. that without subsidy also, I think the apprenticeship should be run. So what is
So
your
the way
thought?
to look at subsidy is not whether it makes it uh, that without those subsidies, organizations will or will not take apprentices. I think that's not the point. I think the way subsidies should be understood not let go of this opportunity. I think that's a symbolic gesture that is being done by the government. It should be looked at in that light. I don't think it means that if there is no subsidy, the industry will or will not take apprentices. I think that's not what it is meant to be. I think it's just the way of bringing or highlighting this issue and just you know. I'm not getting the right word. It's just basically sweetening the deal so much. That's how I like to put it. Nothing more than that. I don't think the future of apprenticeship or the success or failure of apprenticeship programs depends on the subsidy. That's not how I like to look at it.
I think I'll take up two more questions. One more question. I think this is to Aashay. There are limitations on curriculums or courses. So what are your field where you'd like to prepare curriculums which can help your organizations? And so I think he was talking about the job roles under which you want to have apprentices and how we can put all the job roles into one curriculum.
For example, this entire food sector, the food tech sector that has come up, really, really strongly. I think that's a field that needs to be explored further. I think we need more people who are trained in that domain, and maybe it makes sense for industry campus interface to enable some of these courses. But I think that's important. Aside from the traditional ones, fitter, electrician, carpenter, all of these courses have been around for years altogether. Now, my point is for these new age courses, food tech is an example. There might be similar things on the computers side, and I'm not getting too much into analytics and stuff like that because it might be a different domain. I'm just trying to keep it very, very, I think it might make sense. I think industries will need a lot of support, especially in these kind of courses, and it'll be great if industry and campuses work together in basically having some sort of courses in these sectors as well.
Great. So I think we'll just wind up with one more input, which I would like to take it from both of you. Ajit, what is your recommendation to the industry with respect to Apprenticeship Act or apprentices implementation? Anything you want to put it up to the industry in terms of apprenticeship implementation?
Well, Dhriti, what I would say is that I guess we all have to work towards making the apprentice program more meaningful and stronger. We've sort of passed a lot of milestones and we've come a long way, and it's just that I guess as HR leaders, if we can sort of help to influence the mindset across stakeholders, and we are able to capitalize on the apprentice market, as well at the same time as making the program very, very meaningful in terms of the kind of processes that work well, the monitoring, the grading, the assistance, and even mentoring or coaching. I think if we focus on that, it's definitely a win-win both for a candidate as well as the industry.
Great. Aashay, final input from your anything you want to put it to industry, because you've been successfully implementing apprentice. Any guidance or anything you want to put it here?
No. So I think the only thing that we need to do is, as industry, I think we just need to leverage this program that much more. Secondly, we should ensure that the apprentices that are coming in the system are treated as talent, and we should treat them like we would do any other talent, which is to say that there should be they should get opportunities to grow in the organization. They should get opportunities to get exposure, to broaden their scope of learning, their horizon of learning. I think that will go a long way. The industry does need skilled manpower. I mean, there is no running away from that fact, and this is a great program to leverage and make use of.
Great. I think we are done for this particular evening. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking out time for this discussion. We'll again come back to you after some interval in terms of your input, how the things are shaping up with respect to apprenticeship, and hopefully you hire a lot of apprentices, right? And then we will make sure we get a couple of case studies from you so that we can put it to the industry how to implement apprenticeship. Right? Thank you so much, Ajit. Thank you so much, Aashay. Take care.